The night my cousin got arrested, she was wearing a red dress and a wire she didn't know about. I was sitting in an unmarked van 2 blocks away, listening through headphones as the woman who had spent 15 years systematically destroying my life finally said the words that would put her in federal prison. 8 years. Guilty on 14 counts. And when they walked her out in handcuffs, mascara running down her face, she looked across the parking lot and found me. "You pathetic little bitch," she said. "You couldn't keep a man, so you had to destroy me." I looked right back at her and said nothing. Because I didn't need to. The cop beside her was already reading her rights. And I was already free. To understand how we got there, we have to go back to the beginning. And the beginning is a long time ago. Brittany and I grew up together in Wisconsin. Our mothers were sisters. Every holiday, every summer, every Sunday dinner at our grandmother's house. When we were little, maybe 5 or 6, we were actually close. I thought she was my best friend. Then middle school happened and Brittany got beautiful almost overnight, and she discovered that beauty was a weapon. And she was very, very good at using it. Boys walked into walls because they were staring at her. Teachers gave her extensions on assignments. Coaches looked the other way. The whole world bent around her like she had her own gravity. And Brittany took notes on every single bit of it. I was 13 when I had my first real crush. His name was Kevin. We sat next to each other in science class, had been talking for months, and he finally asked me to the spring dance. I was so happy I told Brittany everything that same night, because she was my cousin and I trusted her completely. She showed up to that dance in a red dress. She found Kevin within 5 minutes. They danced together all night and dated for 3 months after that. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Madison, if he really liked you, I wouldn't have been able to steal him. I did you a favor." He was weak. That was her philosophy. Always her philosophy. If she could take it, it wasn't worth having. I was 13 years old and I already understood that my cousin was something dangerous. I just didn't understand yet how dangerous. We went to different colleges and I thought I was finally free. I built a real life in Chicago. Studied graphic design. Made genuine friends. Had actual relationships. Brittany went to Florida and I barely heard from her. I didn't care. I had something that was mine. Then 3 years ago, my phone rang. Her voice came through small and scared, smaller than I had ever heard it. She said she'd left a violent boyfriend. No money. Nowhere to go. "I know I wasn't always nice to you," she said. "But your family. You're the only person I trust." I should have said no. I knew who she was. I had known since I was 13. Instead I said yes. She showed up 3 days later with 2 designer suitcases, that perfect smile, and a plan I didn't know about yet. The first week was almost normal. She slept on my couch, said she was looking for work, seemed almost like a different person. I let myself believe it. That was my mistake. Then Tyler came over. Tyler Chen was my best friend from college. We had tried dating once junior year, lasted 3 weeks, realized we were completely wrong for each other romantically and completely right as friends. He had a girlfriend named Amy when Brittany moved in. They had been together almost a year. He had talked about proposing. He came over one Wednesday evening for a movie night, knocked on the door while I was stuck on a work call, and Brittany answered. I heard her voice through my bedroom wall. All sugar. All warmth. You must be Tyler. Madison has told me so much about you. The call lasted 23 minutes. When I came out, She was pressed against him on the couch, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he'd said. Tyler looked uncomfortable. But he also looked interested. I had seen that look before. I knew exactly what it meant. 2 days later, Tyler texted saying he couldn't hang out for a while. Amy was feeling insecure about our friendship. He needed to focus on his relationship. I called him immediately. Amy had never had a problem with us. We'd all hung out together. She liked me. Did Brittany say something to you? Silence. Then he admitted it. Brittany had mentioned that maybe Amy had a point, that it was strange for him to spend so much time with another woman. My blood went cold. I told him he barely knew her. He said he knew. He said he'd call me later. He didn't call. Didn't text. A week went by, then 2. I saw on social media that he'd broken up with Amy. And I saw Brittany coming home 4 nights that week at 6 in the morning, still in last night's clothes, wearing that satisfied look she had when she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. I asked where she'd been. She said out with a friend. I asked which friend. She said I didn't know them. But I knew exactly who. Brittany moved out 1 month later. She'd found an apartment. A friend was helping with rent. When I asked which friend, she smiled and said, Tyler. We're dating now. Isn't that great? We'll practically be related if it works out. I couldn't breathe. I told her she was the problem. She laughed and said, Madison, you can't be mad at me because a guy chose me. If he was really yours, I couldn't have taken him. She moved out 2 days later without saying goodbye, without a word of thanks for the month she had lived in my apartment for free. I called my best friend Ashley that night and told her everything. Ashley said to cut Brittany off completely. I said she was family. Ashley said family doesn't get a free pass to destroy your life. She was right. I just wasn't ready to hear it. 3 months later, Tyler called. He and Brittany had broken up. She had been using him. He had given her $10,000 for what she described as a business investment, and then she had stopped answering his calls entirely. When he finally reached her, she said the money had been a gift. I felt sick. We talked for an hour. He apologized over and over. I wanted to forgive him. Wanted my best friend back. But something had broken between us that I didn't know how to repair. I told him I needed time. He said he'd wait. We never really found our way back. Then I met Daniel. Finance. Expensive suits. Nice car. Everything about him said success, but he was also kind and genuinely curious and actually listened when I talked. We dated for 2 months before I made the mistake of bringing him to my mother's birthday party. Brittany was there. Black dress. Flawless makeup. She walked in like she owned the room, scanned it in about 4 seconds, found Daniel, and I watched her expression shift into something I recognized immediately. Something predatory and precise. She came over and took his hand and held it just a beat too long and said, Madison didn't mention how handsome you are. 3 hours. That was all it took. In the car on the way home, Daniel was quiet. He mentioned Brittany. Said she seemed single. Said he was just wondering. I could hear it in his voice. The hook was already in. I had seen this exact movie before, and I already knew how it ended. 2 weeks later I found the texts on his phone while he was in the shower. Hundreds of them. Flirty, then explicit. Planning when to meet. Photos I will never be able to unsee. When he came out, I was on the couch with his phone in my hand. He didn't try to deny it. Just sat down and said quietly, "I don't know what happened. She just got under my skin." I couldn't stop thinking about her. I told him to get out. He left. Didn't try to explain more. Didn't fight for me. Just gathered his things and walked out of my apartment and my life without looking back. I called Brittany immediately after. She answered on the first ring. "Hey cuz. What's up?" I asked how she could keep doing this to me. She said, "Madison, I don't do anything to you. I give these guys a choice and they choose me. Every single time. That's not my fault. That's yours." Then she hung up. I called my mother. Told her everything, again, for what felt like the 100th time in my life. Expected shock. Anger. Some version of being believed. Instead she sighed and said maybe I was just too available. Maybe Brittany played harder to get and I should learn from that. That was the moment I finally accepted that my mother would never take my side. Because Brittany was charming and beautiful and everything a family wanted to believe in. And I was just Madison. Plain, tired, always crying Madison. I stopped going to family dinners after that. Stopped answering calls. They thought I was being dramatic. I stopped caring what they thought. Over the next year it happened 3 more times. And I need you to understand what that actually felt like, because the way I described it before, just 3 names and 3 outcomes, doesn't come close to capturing it. Marcus was a photographer I met at an art gallery opening. We spent 2 hours talking about light and color and he had this way of seeing the world that I found genuinely beautiful. I thought, finally, someone Brittany will never find. She found him in 6 weeks. She showed up at his studio one afternoon claiming to be dropping something off for me, and that was that. When he stopped texting me back, I already knew why. I didn't even bother asking. Ben was a lawyer. 3 months. Careful and thoughtful and exactly the kind of person I had convinced myself Brittany would have no interest in. She added him on social media. They ran into each other at a bar that he later admitted she had specifically gone to because she knew he'd be there. When he told me it was over, he couldn't even look at me. He just said he was sorry, he didn't know how to explain it, and left. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 45 minutes before I could drive home. Chris was a teacher. 5 months. The longest. I was careful this time. I kept him almost completely offline. Didn't post about him. Didn't mention him to my family. I thought I had finally built a wall high enough. Then Brittany showed up at his school claiming to be my cousin dropping off something I'd forgotten. She got his number from the front desk. Within 3 weeks, he was gone. When I found out how she had done it, something in me went very quiet. Not sad. Not angry. Just quiet. Like a switch being turned off. I stopped dating after Chris. Stopped going out entirely. Stopped making new friends because making new friends meant potentially introducing them to Brittany, and I couldn't do that to anyone else. Even Ashley started keeping more distance after Brittany hit on her boyfriend at a party. I didn't blame her. I would have done the same. I was completely alone, and Brittany was living her best life, and I had run out of ways to fight it. What I didn't know, and what I couldn't have known, was that while I was disappearing from my own life, Brittany was also being watched. Not by me. By people who were very, very good at their jobs. My therapist, Dr. Huang, was the first person who ever looked me in the eye and said it plainly. What your cousin is doing is abusive. It's predatory. You are not the problem here. She is. I had heard versions of "you should set better boundaries" and "you need to limit contact" for years. But nobody had ever just said, "she is the problem. Not you." I sat in Dr. Huang's office and cried for the last 20 minutes of the session and didn't care at all. It was the first time in years that someone had told me the truth. 6 months ago, Ashley dragged me to a networking event I had absolutely no interest in attending. I stood in a corner with a glass of wine and planned my exit. That's when a woman approached me. Dark hair. Kind eyes. Something about her felt immediately safe. Her name was Rachel, and she worked in financial investigation. Fraud cases. We made small talk, and then something about her made me want to tell the real version. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe I just needed one person to hear the whole story without flinching. I told her about Brittany, Tyler, Daniel, Marcus, and Ben and Chris. How she had radar for anyone I cared about. How no one in my family believed me. How I had stopped being a person who tried anymore. Rachel had gone very still while I talked. When I finished, she asked, "What is your cousin's full name?" I told her. Brittany Reynolds. The color drained from Rachel's face. She grabbed my arm. "Are you kidding me right now?" We left the event and went to a coffee shop around the corner. Rachel pulled out a notepad. Brittany wasn't just my manipulative cousin. She was a serial fraud suspect under active investigation by multiple agencies across 4 states. Romance scams. She would meet men, build trust over weeks or months, pitch fake investment opportunities or fabricate emergencies, take the money, and disappear. Florida. Georgia. Tennessee. Now Illinois. Over $200,000 confirmed, possibly much more. Fake IDs. Fake business cards. Fake everything. We've been trying to build a case for months, but she never uses her real name with victims and she moves constantly. I thought about Tyler's $10,000. About all of them. I gave Rachel every name I could remember. Every detail I knew. She wrote it all down without stopping. When I finally finished, she looked at me and said, "Madison, you just gave me 4 more victims and 4 more pieces of evidence." Then she leaned forward across the table. "And I think you're the exact right person to help us catch her." The plan was simple in theory. Rachel had an undercover colleague named Marcus Chin. Mid-30s. Good-looking in a quiet, deliberate way. The kind of understated confidence that signals old money without announcing it. Everything Brittany specifically targeted. They wanted me to introduce him to her as someone I was interested in, let Brittany do what she always did, and this time Marcus would be recording everything. Getting her on tape pitching the scam. Then arrest. I should have taken more time to think about it. She was still my blood. There was a version of me, not long ago, who would have found a reason to say no. But I thought about Tyler. About Daniel. About the man Rachel had mentioned in Florida who had lost his house, his retirement, his small business, and had tried to take his own life afterward because he had nothing left. That man had a name. He had a family. He was a real person who had been completely destroyed by the woman I had grown up believing was my best friend. This was not about me anymore. This was about stopping her before someone else reached that point of no return. I said yes. We spent 2 weeks planning. I curated my social media carefully. Fancy restaurants. A designer bag I borrowed from a colleague. Posts about a work promotion. And photos of Marcus. The first picture was staged at an upscale steakhouse. His hand near mine on the table. the caption deliberately vague. Just warmth and gratitude and nothing specific. Brittany liked it within 4 minutes of posting. The message came 90 seconds after that. OMG, who is that? He's gorgeous. You should absolutely introduce me. My hands were shaking when I typed back. I told her he'd be in town the following week. Did she want to get drinks and meet him? 3 heart emojis. 3 fire emojis. Yes. I'd love to meet him. Rachel read the messages over my shoulder and said simply, got her. The night of the setup I almost called it off. I sat in my car in the parking structure for 10 minutes with my hands on the wheel and thought about everything that could go wrong. She was still my cousin. Whatever she had done, she was still the girl I had played dolls with when I was 6 years old. Then I thought about the man in Florida. I started the car and drove to the bar. Marcus was already there when I arrived. A suit that cost more than my rent. A watch that looked appropriately significant without being showy. He was good at this. He looked like exactly the kind of man Brittany would cross a room for. We made small talk, laughed at the right moments, looked like 2 people who were pleased to be in each other's company. Brittany showed up exactly 27 minutes late, because she always made people wait, because that was a power move she had been perfecting since she was 16. She walked in wearing a red dress, because it was always a red dress, and every head in the room turned. I watched Marcus's eyes widen for exactly 1 second before he looked at me and gave the smallest possible nod. He was in character. Just in character. For the next hour I watched my cousin work, and even knowing exactly what she was doing, even having seen it dozens of times across 15 years, it was still something to witness. Every word was calculated. Every touch was designed. Every laugh landed at exactly the right moment. She asked about his job, his ambitions, his family. She listened with her whole body, like whatever he said was the most interesting thing she had ever heard. She touched his arm, his hand, his knee, in a sequence so natural it seemed accidental. And then she found her opening. She mentioned she had been thinking about starting her own business, that it was so difficult to find investors who truly understood vision rather than just chasing safe returns. Marcus said that sounded genuinely interesting. She beamed at him like he was the first person who had ever really seen her. She had just won. She just didn't know the lottery was a trap. They exchanged numbers at the table. I watched her type her name into his phone. Watched her take a contact photo. Watched her send herself a text so she would have his number saved. I sat across from them and smiled and felt nothing except cold, clear, absolute determination. Over the following month, Marcus and Brittany texted constantly. He showed me everything. Professional to flirty to explicit within a week. She sent the business plan within 10 days. A fake consulting firm with a real-looking website and professional branding. That was why it worked on intelligent, successful men. She was extraordinarily good at making lies look like opportunity. Marcus played the perfect mark. Impressed but cautious. Asking smart questions. Seeming like someone worth convincing. Within 2 weeks she was talking numbers. $50,000 for 20% equity. Projected returns of 300% within 2 years. All of it completely fabricated. Marcus scheduled dinners. Always recording. Always building the case. During this month I had to see Brittany at 2 family dinners my mother insisted on. She showed up both times glowing, talking about her new business, her new investor, how well everything was going. My mother looked at me across the table and said, "See? Brittany's really coming into her own. You should be happy for her." I sat there and said nothing. In 3 weeks it wouldn't matter. The night Marcus went to Brittany's apartment, Rachel and I sat in an unmarked van 2 blocks away. A team of 5 other officers. A prosecutor. Recording equipment running. I put on the headphones and listened. I heard Brittany answer the door. Sweet. Warm. The sound of glasses. Wine being poured. Small talk, easy and practiced. And then her voice shifting gears, moving into the pitch with the smooth confidence of someone who had done this many times before and had never once been caught. Marcus asked the right questions. Seemed genuinely interested. Cautious in exactly the right measure. The perfect target. And then Brittany shifted tactics, exactly the way Rachel had predicted she would. Marcus, I need to be honest with you. This isn't just business for me anymore. I feel like we have a real connection. Like this could be something more. Rachel squeezed my hand in the van. I held my breath. Marcus said he felt it too, his voice at exactly the right temperature. And then Brittany said the words that would seal everything. Be my partner. In business and in life. Take a chance on me. Papers rustling. Her walking him through the terms. The 50,000. The projected returns. The equity split. And then Marcus's voice changed. Harder. Certain. Brittany. What really happens to the money? Because we both know this company doesn't exist. And I know this isn't the first time you've done this. Multiple men. Multiple states. Multiple names. A long silence. Her voice going cold, telling him to leave. And Marcus said, I'm Detective Marcus Chen with the Chicago Police Department. And you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and theft by deception. She screamed. I heard furniture crashing. Her voice rising, yelling about entrapment, about her rights, about how none of this was legal. More voices entering. The sound of officers moving through the apartment. Rachel had her hand on my arm and wasn't letting go. 20 minutes later they walked her out. Handcuffs. No makeup now. Mascara tracking down her face. Hair loose. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her look in my entire life. And then she found me standing next to Rachel and the other officers. Her eyes went wide first. Then narrow. Understanding arriving all at once. You, she said. You set me up. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. You pathetic little bitch. You couldn't keep a single man, so you had to take everything from me. The words should have cut. A year ago, 6 months ago, they would have cut. Instead I looked at her steadily and said, I didn't take anything from you. You took from everyone around you your entire life. I just made sure the world finally saw what you really are. They put her in the car. She was still screaming when they drove away down the street. Rachel put her arm around me and asked if I was okay. I said I thought so. I wasn't sure. I felt numb, the way you feel after something you have been bracing for finally arrives. The investigation that followed revealed more than anyone had expected. Brittany hadn't stolen $200,000. She had stolen close to $300,000 from 7 men across 4 states. Tyler had given her $20,000. Daniel had given $15,000 over 2 months, believing he was helping with a business launch. The others had given varying amounts. One had lost his entire retirement savings. One had taken out a second mortgage. The man from Florida who had tried to end his life had lost his house, his business, and his sense of any possible future, All of it gone because of Brittany. When Rachel showed me the full number and the full list, I sat in her office and stared at the wall for a long time without speaking. I had spent 15 years thinking this was a story about me and my cousin and the men she stole. It was never that small. The trial took 6 months to begin. More victims came forward during that time. Women she had lived with and stolen from. Family members she had manipulated. Friends who had loaned her money that was never meant to be a loan. I testified. Tyler testified. Danielle testified. All 7 primary victims testified. I watched Brittany through all of it. She sat at the defense table in a blazer, looking bored, occasionally whispering to her lawyer, as if this entire proceeding was an inconvenience she was patiently enduring. Her lawyer argued she had been a victim of abusive relationships, that she had acted out of desperation, that the men had given the money willingly. The jury didn't buy a word of it. The evidence was too clean. Fake IDs. Fabricated business documents. Recorded conversations where she made the pitch in her own voice. When the verdict came back, I was in the courtroom. Guilty on all 14 counts. Brittany's face didn't move. She stared straight ahead like the words hadn't reached her yet. Then the sentence, a month later. 8 years in federal prison, no eligibility for parole before 5. That was when I saw the crack. A flash of something raw in her face. Fear. Actual, unperformed fear. The woman who had made me feel small my entire life was genuinely terrified. And I felt nothing. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just a deep, complete, exhausted nothing. And somehow that nothing was exactly right. After the trial, Tyler reached out. I told him I forgave him, and I meant it, but that we weren't the same people anymore and that friendship had ended with who we used to be. He understood. We haven't spoken since. Danielle sent a long email. I deleted it without finishing it. Some apologies arrived too late to matter. My mother called, crying. She said she should have believed me. She said she had chosen Brittany over her own daughter and she was sorry. We talked for an hour and I accepted the apology and meant that too. But something was permanently shifted between us, and we both felt it. There are things you can forgive and still not be able to undo. Rachel became a genuine friend. She introduced me to people who had normal lives and no schemes, people who said what they meant and meant what they said. I started dating again, slowly, and with a wariness I no longer tried to pretend wasn't there. There was a man named James at a dinner party. Quiet. Steady. A teacher. Nothing flashy. When I eventually told him about Brittany, about all of it, he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "That's awful. But you know what? You survived it. You're still here. That says something about who you are." I asked him what it said. He said, "That you're stronger than you think you are." I wasn't sure I believed him. But I wanted to. That felt like enough to start. 3 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from a woman named Jennifer. She had been one of Brittany's victims in Georgia. $40,000. She wrote that she had been too ashamed to come forward at first. Seeing me testify had given her courage. We talked for over an hour. Brittany had befriended her at a yoga class, built a real friendship over months, learned everything about her life, and then one day showed up crying about her sick mother needing urgent medical treatment she couldn't afford. All of it fabricated. Every detail of that friendship built on a foundation of nothing. I felt so stupid, Jennifer said. Like I should have known better. I told her the only thing I had needed to hear for 15 years and never gotten. You're not stupid. She's just that good. She practiced on people her whole life. She was very, very good at it. Jennifer and I have stayed in touch. We check in on each other. We're both rebuilding, piece by piece. There is something genuinely sustaining about knowing other people who understand what it means to be targeted by someone like that, and who are still standing anyway. A few weeks ago, Brittany sent a letter from prison. 1 page. I read it looking for the angle, the manipulation, the hidden hook she always had somewhere. At the very end, 1 sentence. You always were the stronger one. I read it 3 times. I still don't know if it was true or if it was one last move in a game I had already won. Maybe it doesn't matter. I burned it in my kitchen sink and watched her words turn to ash, and then I went on with my life. Here is what I know now. Brittany was not actually that difficult to understand. She had discovered very young that she could take things from people and that most people would blame themselves for losing them. She had turned that discovery into a life. What made her effective wasn't that she was exceptional. It was that she was consistent, and that the people around her, myself included, kept choosing the explanation that required the least amount of courage. It was easier to believe I was too available, or too plain, or not trying hard enough, than to say clearly, this person is doing this deliberately and it needs to stop. The moment I stopped making excuses for her was the moment everything changed. James proposed last month. We were on the balcony of our apartment at sunset. He got down on one knee and I said yes before he finished the question. We're getting married in 6 weeks. Small ceremony. The people who showed up when it counted. Ashley is my maid of honor. Rachel is coming. Jennifer is flying in. My dad is walking me down the aisle. My mom is trying, genuinely trying, and I am choosing to let her. Brittany's first appeal was denied. The conviction stands. 5 years minimum before parole. I don't think about her much anymore. She is not the main character of my life. She never should have been. This is the story my cousin tried to write for me. The one where I was weak and pathetic and could never hold on to anything worth having. I wrote a different ending. She's in prison. I'm getting married in 6 weeks. She tried to make me disappear and instead I outlasted her, outwitted her, and stopped her before she destroyed someone who couldn't have survived it. That's not revenge. That's just what happens when someone who has been pushed long enough finally decides to push back. I had enough. I held the pen. And I chose how this ends.